Pedaling and Aisling win the tiebreaker. Their group is moving on with a win of 2-1. Rippling's attention is brought back to the leaders in the competition at the raised voice of Rose Dust. Retrieving her gaze from Coldling, Rippling turned to look at where the first two groups had just finished the judging of their prey. Aisling had his chest puffed out, and Pedaling was wearing a smug smile as they looked at the cats they had been judged against. She heard a small sigh behind her from Ivy Nose as he watched as well. That's not the attitude they should be taking as close as they are to being named as guardians. A high and mighty attitude is bound to crumble and fall eventually, or lead to an overinflated pride that even the slightest loss will break. Shaking his head, he let out a sigh again as Leafthorn chuckled. They'll eventually learn, Ivy. Not much we can do knowing who their mentors are. Their claws are sunk deep in those two. For now, we can only hope their attitudes improve as they get older. They are still young after all. Maybe so, Leaf, but age can only be used as an excuse for so long before it becomes criticism. As the two murmured back and forth, Rippling looked at the mentioned fledglings. They had only barely managed to win, but they were being over the top about it. The rest of their group seemed happy to be moving on, but there was some distance between the other 6 and their small celebration. The score between the remaining two groups is currently tied at 1-1. Jolted out of her stupor, Rippling looked up to see she had missed a fair amount of the judging for her group. Mintling and Lionling lost by only a small margin, while Flameling and Duskling won by a landslide of a score. Last up was the judging on her and Swiftling's pile. Brightmoon had already stepped forward and was sniffing each piece of prey individually to check for anything off about the scent. As she did so, Rippling could have sworn she had seen the faint flicker of a transparent wolf-shaped shadow surrounding Brightmoon. The same could be said about an eagle-shaped shadow perching on the back of Willowwing during the scrutiny of the prey's physical appearance. After they finished inspecting Featherling and Coldling's pile, they pulled out the prey they were dissatisfied with and set them apart from the better quality prey. Seeing most of the prey come from the ones she had hunted, Coldling stared in disbelief, but knew that as the leaders were using their line abilities, there was no way they were wrong. As the two moved on to Swiftling and Rippling's pile, the process proceeded in the same way as a moment ago. Rippling continued to stare at the shadows over the leaders as they worked, curious about them until she saw the eagle sitting on Willowwing's back turn its head. Upon it doing so, Ripple had the strong sensation as if it was looking into her eyes. The feeling mesmerized her until she felt a soft nudge against her neck. Turning her head, she saw Swiftling looking at her with a furrowed look. "Did I see it wrong?" she heard him murmur to himself. "Did you see what wrong, Swift? I could have sworn your eyes were starting to glow for a moment while you looked at Willowwing, but they aren't glowing now, so I probably saw it wrong." Tilting her head, Rippling was about to respond when Brightmoon and Willowwings finished sorting out their pile. Swiftling and Rippling win. Against Coldling and Featherling, the two came out with much more high-quality prey, and barely any had to be sorted out. Rippling looked towards the other two fledglings and saw Featherling looking at her. When their gazes met, Featherling gave her a congratulatory nod and narrowed her eyes warmly. In contrast, Coldling was glaring at Rippling as if she wanted to shred her to pieces. Rippling felt a mixture of emotions as she exchanged glances with Featherling and Coldling. On one paw, she was pleased with their victory and appreciated Featherling's friendly gesture. On the other paw, Coldling's intense glare unnerved her. She couldn't help but wonder what had caused such animosity between them. Ignoring Coldling's hostile stare, Rippling smiled gratefully at Featherling and nodded in acknowledgement. She was glad to see that not all the fledglings in the wolf line harbored resentments towards her. As the leaders announced their victory, Rippling's heart swelled with a sense of accomplishment. Their group had secured another win, and they were one step closer to the end of the competition. Turning her attention back to Swiftling, Rippling couldn't shake off the strange observation he had made about her eyes. Glowing eyes were often associated with special abilities or hidden powers, but she hadn't noticed anything unusual about herself. Perhaps Swiftling had simply imagined it, or there was some other explanation. "I'm not sure what you saw, Swift," Rippling replied honestly, her gaze drifting back to the leaders momentarily. "But it's possible that the light was playing tricks on your eyes. Or maybe it was just a momentary reflection. Either way, I don't feel any different, so it's probably nothing to worry about." Swiftling nodded, though a trace of uncertainty remained in his expression. You're probably right. It must have been my imagination. Let's focus on our victory instead. Rippling agreed, pushing the mysterious incident to the back of her mind for now. There would be time to ponder it later. For now, she basked in the joy of their success and the support she had received from her team. As the group celebrated their win and prepared for the next stage of the competition, Rippling vowed to continue improving her skills and proving herself a worthy fledgling. The competition moved forward, and Rippling remained focused on the tasks at hand. She was determined to give her best and showcase her abilities as they progressed through the challenges. As the group prepared for the next stage, she couldn't help but wonder about the hostility from Coldling. After the judging of the hunting competition, the leaders announced a short break in preparation for the mock battles. During this break, Rippling found herself in a quiet corner with Mintling. They had become closer after their initial introductions at the start of the competition, and Rippling appreciated Mintling's forward and honest nature. She decided to confide in her newfound friend about the unwarranted tension between her and Coldling. Rippling sighed softly, her gaze fixed on the ground as she spoke to Mintling. I don't know what I did to Coldling, but she seems to have some sort of grudge against me. Ever since the competition started, she's been giving me these hostile looks and behaving coldly. Mintling listened attentively, his eyes filled with understanding. I've noticed her behavior too, Rippling. I'll be honest with you. Coldling has a severe crush on Swiftling. She's liked him since before they became fledglings, I'm pretty certain, and she demonstrates strong possessiveness over him whenever other she-cats get close. But with Swiftling not caring to get close to she-cats in general, you're a new face and an anomaly at that, in the way he interacts with you. It's showing strongly that she doesn't like that, not one bit. Considering the fact you're in the same group as him, and he even chose you as his partner during the hunting part of the competition, she's probably fuming. Rippling took a moment to absorb what Mintling told her and tilted her head in slight confusion at him. But Ivy knows greeted the rest of the lieutenants the same way I greeted Swift. If she likes him so much, why doesn't she just tell him? Mintling gave Rippling a sympathetic look as he thought of how best to respond to her. He was starting to realize the gap between understandings between the wolf pack Rippling grew up in and the new group of cats she was living with. The wolves seemed to be fairly straightforward in their ways, so seeing how the cats and the lions interacted was cause for confusion on occasion. She has originally, but Swiftling told her he didn't feel the same and turned her down. He told her he was fine with being friends, but wanted nothing more past that, even when they became guardians. As for how Ivy Nose greeted Dewdrop and the others, that's a greeting saved for close friends or family. It shows you're close and important to each other. So for you to greet Swiftling, who you met for the first time today, like that, was a bit of a shock to every cat here. But the fact that he reciprocated the response was what shocked them most. Rippling nodded, starting to grasp the situation a little better. I see. So Coldling's behavior towards me is because she's jealous of the attention Swiftling is giving me, even though he doesn't have romantic feelings for her. And my greeting to Swiftling was unexpected because it's reserved for close friends or family. Mintling let her process that a moment before continuing. Correct. While it's fine since Swiftling had no issue with the greeting and responded in kind, it isn't something you should do going forward. Ivy Nose said you normally dip your head or flick your ears in greeting. That's fine to continue when you meet others going forward. Otherwise, you can touch your tail to the top of their front left paw as well. Rippling nodded again, grateful for Mintling's explanation and guidance. Thank you for clarifying that, Mintling. I don't want to cause any more misunderstandings or tensions. I'll make sure to follow the proper greetings from now on. Mintling smiled warmly at Rippling. No problem at all, Rippling. We're all here to support each other and help each other grow. If you have any more questions or need any assistance, don't hesitate to ask. We're a team after all. Rippling returned the smile, feeling relieved to have someone she could rely on in this unfamiliar environment. I appreciate your kindness, Mintling. I'm glad to have you as a friend. Let's continue working together and show everyone what we're capable of. After gathering back up in the meadow after the break, the leaders announced it was time for the mock battles. Between the two remaining groups, we will hold a mock combat between 3 pairs. Each group was to pick 3 participants, and This segment is also the best of 3, Bright Moon called out. Willowwing nodded and motioned for the 2 groups to send forward the cats they had selected. Mintling, Oakling, and Rainling stepped forward from Rippling's group, while Ashling, Lightling, and Smokeling stepped forward from the other group. So with this lineup, it looks like we have some good matches ahead of us, Streamflow bellowed out after seeing the chosen 6. Rainling will be matched against Smokeling, Lightling will go against Oakling, and Mintling will spar with Ashling. Rosedust motioned with her tail for the 6 cats to take their sides and for the rest of the fledglings in the clearing to make room for the matches. Once they had done so, she raised her head and looked between the 2 sides. Now, here are the rules. No claws. Fangs are fine, but no biting hard enough to draw blood. If anyone breaks either of these rules, your fight is over and you lose. Am I understood? Watching as they nodded their heads, Rosedust flicked her tail satisfied. Then we will start the matches off with Oakling versus Lightling. The tension in the air was palpable as Oakling and Lightling faced each other, ready to begin their mock battle. Rippling watched from the side, her heart pounding with anticipation. She had no real awareness of just how well the 3 of their chosen contestants for this round were, as she had never seen them in a fight, and a slight nervousness for her teammates was growing in her chest. As the battle commenced, Oakling and Lightling circled each other, eyes locked in determination. They exchanged swift movements and quick strikes, testing each other's reflexes and agility. Oakling's training as a fledgling was evident as he showcased his precise movements and strategic thinking. Lightling, on the other hand, displayed impressive speed and flexibility, making it challenging for Oakling to land solid hits. The crowd watched with bated breath as the 2 fought, each displaying their unique skills and techniques. After several intense minutes, Oakling managed to outmaneuver Lightling and landed a well-placed swipe with his paw, scoring a point and winning the round. The crowd erupted in cheers, acknowledging Oakling's victory in the round. However, the battle was far from over, and both fighters stepped back to their respective sides to make room for the next pair of fighters. Oakling puffed out his chest filled with pride at overcoming Lightling, and Rippling could see Lightling, while frustrated he lost, was not upset over the fight, and actually seemed as if he had enjoyed it quite a bit. Sandstream leaned over to Rippling and whispered into her ear, "Oakling takes great pride in being one of, if not, our strongest fledgling. He'll make a great guardian when the time comes. He puts a lot of work into his combat training, because we have to deal with more out in the open moorland compared to those of you who are covered by the forest canopy." Before many more congratulations could be given to Oakling, Rosedust stepped forward again to announce the next pair to spar. Rippling noticed that for just a moment, her eyes moved toward Oakling with a glint of pride before she spoke. The next match will be between Rainling and Smokeling. Rippling shifted her attention to Rainling. She didn't know much about him, as none of the others had said much, but he stuck to Dustling's side without much of a word. Rippling was unsure of how this fight would go as she turned her gaze to Smokeling and saw his posture showing confidence and a slight disdain to Rainling. Rippling had been told that the eagle-eyed cats were known for being swift and decisive in their strikes and decisions, whether that be while hunting, in combat, or just in how they interacted with others. She had yet to see Rainling display these traits as of yet. As for Smokeling, he was from the coyote line, like Oakling. They were used to open moorland, and used dust and dirt to their advantage when viable. As Rainling and Smokeling prepared to face off, Rippling couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation and curiosity. Rainling had been relatively quiet and reserved throughout their time together today, and she wondered if he possessed hidden skills that were yet to be revealed. The 2 combatants took their positions, eyes locked on each other, as the crowd grew silent in anticipation. Rainling crouched low, his muscles tensed and ready to spring into action. Smokeling, with a smirk on his face, exuded confidence as he observed his opponent. At the signal, Rainling darted forward, his movements swift and fluid. He utilized his agility to dodge Smokeling's attacks, his steps light and precise. Smokeling, on the other hand, displayed a more aggressive approach, attempting to overpower Rainling with his strength and speed. Rippling observed the clash between the 2. Each fighter employed their unique strategies and techniques. Rainling, though initially reserved, showed remarkable adaptability, using the environment to his advantage and surprising Smokeling with unexpected maneuvers. Smokeling, however, was relentless in his pursuit, his strikes forceful and calculated. He tried to corner Rainling, aiming to limit his movements and exploit any weaknesses. But Rainling's elusive nature allowed him to evade Smokeling's attack and counter with swift, calculated strikes of his own. The battle between Rainling and Smokeling was intense, with neither giving an inch. The crowd watched in awe as the two combatants displayed their skills and resilience. Rippling felt a mix of excitement and concern, hoping Rainling would be able to hold his own against Smokeling's relentless assault. After a fierce exchange of blows, Rainling attempted to catch Smokeling off guard with a sudden twist and landed a well-aimed swipe. But the moment Rainling twisted, Smokeling threw dust into his face, causing a momentary lapse in Rainling's movement, allowing Smokeling to pin him, securing a point for his team. Rainling walked back to the group with his head down, clearly not expecting to have lost, and Duskling ran over to him. "Come on, you did great. You couldn't have guessed he'd use the dust on you at that specific time." Rainling just nodded his head with his ears laid back, showing he heard her, but not cheering up just yet. Streamflow stepped forward and raised his head to look around the meadow. Currently, points are tied, 1-1, so this last match will be the deciding factor on who moves on to the finals. A lot of the gathered cats cheered, while others murmured amongst themselves in anticipation on how this would end. Mintling and Ashling, you're the last match. Rippling turned her gaze to look at the two as they each stood on their respective sides. Mintling was observing Ashling from ear tips to paws to see if anything stood out in the opposing cat's demeanor and bearing. Ashling on the other paw just gave Mintling a condescending look and sneered as if he wasn't even worth his time. This caused Rippling to start fuming. She had gotten used to the verbal and nonverbal abuse and harassment from Ashling, Pedaling, and some others in the wolf line. But she didn't just want to stand here as he did the same to Mintling or any of her new friends. Feeling someone tug on her tail slightly, she turned to look and saw Lionling next to her. "It's okay. Mintling can handle him. Ashling is going to regret acting cocky." Giving her a reassuring look, he nodded for her to look at Streamflow. The leader looked back and forth between the two fledglings and once again spoke. "Then, let the final match begin."